tonight on Unsolved Mysteries.
Peace, harmony, enlightenment, and 11 untimely deaths. This is a legacy of an obscure spiritual movement. When a respected young English professor joined up, his family became concerned. Now he's disappeared, and they're asking for your help. To Elizabeth Jeschek, Jonathan Palmer was dashing, sophisticated, and fearless. Everything you'd expect a world-class race car driver to be. Elizabeth fell madly in love, headlong into a bizarre mystery. In Georgia, a secluded lover's lane, a burst of gunfire, a young couple slain. Now 2 witnesses disagree on the identity of the killer. Once upon a time, a young boy tossed a message in a bottle into a landlocked lake. He never dreamed he was launching it on an improbable, around-the-world journey. Also tonight, an exciting update. See how a viewer tip brought about the capture of an accused killer. Join me. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
By now, I'm sure you've heard of my death, and I'm sorry to have to put you through this way.
In this haunting message to his family, 50-year-old Don Hoffman revealed he had terminal cancer, a diagnosis he said 3 different doctors had confirmed.
He ran some tests and found that I had terminal non-operable cancer.
Just hours after making this video, Hoffman took his own life. An autopsy, however, found absolutely no trace of cancer. Hoffman's children have never been able to learn the names of his 3 doctors, or even if they existed. On the videotape, Don Hoffman said goodbye to 5 different family members. There was no farewell to the heir to Hoffman's estate, his second wife, Terry, founder of a spiritual movement known as conscious development of body, mind, and soul. Today, Terry Hoffman is a woman at the center of what some might call a circle of death. Among the victims, Mary Levinson, drug overdose. David and Glenda Goodman, shot to death, probable double suicide. Jill Bounds, bludgeoned to death. Sandy Cleaver drove off a cliff in broad daylight. Sandy's 14-year-old daughter, Devereaux, drowned. 11 untimely deaths. 11 people with a direct or indirect link to Terry Hoffman. Now, some believe a 12th name should be added to this somber list. Charles Southern, Jr., a respected English professor. Southern mysteriously disappeared more than 7 years ago, and his family believes it may be no coincidence that he was a disciple of Terry Hoffman.
Call upon your master. Visualize him.
Peace, harmony, enlightenment.
See his eyes.
Terry Hoffman offered all this and more to Charles Southern and the many others who joined her group, Conscious Development.
The Lord of the 5th plane to guide you at this time.
Part of the belief system Terry taught us was that death was really just another state of consciousness.
Meditation.
And it wasn't a bad thing, it wasn't anything to fear.
Peter Muth belonged to Hoffman's sect for more than a decade.
Battles with the darker energies.
The other thing we learned was that the dark forces out there in the universe had a name. They were the Black Lords, Black Overlords. They worked for Satan.
And fight those dark lords, and I.
The group we worked with were the White Brotherhood, or good, benevolent characters. They're on God's side, the good guys. And we worked with them to combat the dark forces.
Terry Hoffman cultivated followers around the country. Among those who joined the Chicago branch of Conscious Development was Charles Southern, Jr. Southern was assistant chairman of the English department at a local junior college. Joining Hoffman's group was his most recent foray in an ongoing search for spiritual truth, an odyssey that had taken Charles Southern as far away from home as India and Africa.
Charles was very interested in Eastern religions and various religions. In fact, he studied all the different religions that he could. And that was his curiosity. I think it got him in trouble.
My feeling is that his interest in Terry was he felt a power there, and that was real to him. The fact that this power might not necessarily have a good will or not, that was sort of irrelevant to him, I guess.
I will be able to relax.
Charles rose quickly to a position of influence in Terry Hoffman's organization, teaching classes and leading meditation sessions.
At your own pace.
Eventually, he was invited to her home in Dallas.
The darkness of the Lord comes, and he is bright in his evil.
By then, Terry Hoffman had begun to portray herself as a target of attack by the so-called Black Lords. During special meditation sessions, Hoffman exhorted her trusted inner circle to erect, quote, a psychic shield around her. Peter Muth says he saw Charles at one of these meetings.
It continues.
I just met him briefly, but the reason it sticks in my mind is he came as a visitor to one of these closed meetings at Terry's house, where she's having psychic surgery to repair damage to her done by the Black Lords who have been attacking her.
Now I see the intertwining of light and dark.
I felt that if Charles or any of us who were in that room, Terry's master bedroom, would only be there at Terry's invitation and only be there because they're true believers in the reality she is selling us about creation and her role in it as a godlike figure.
The shield is strong, but it must be stronger.
Now, our inner core group who were fighting the battles lived in a kind of constant state of fear because we were always under attack from black magicians who supposedly could kill us, who could drive us insane. And as the years went by, you saw people in your group actually start to show signs of the strain, show signs of mental and emotional problems.
Charles Southern was apparently one of those who buckled under the pressure.
We found Charles wandering on the street carrying a newspaper stating, "I lived for art." We got him in the car and took him to Michael Reese Hospital for examination, stating that he might be suicidal, and he also seemed to be reciting something in a strange language over and over and over again.
During Charles's recovery, his mother visited every day. So did two members of Hoffman's sect.
You're looking good.
I'm feeling much better.
Good,
much
glad to
better.
hear
This is my mother.
Later, I
Mother,
was to
these are
find
some
out
friends
from
of
my
mine.
mother, who stayed with my brother during the whole 5 days, that whenever she was there at the hospital and they came, she was asked to leave the room and stay out.
How are you?
Upon his release, Charles resumed his normal activities. He remained active in Hoffman's group, though friends say he eventually became disillusioned with Hoffman herself. As 1987 drew to a close, Charles made arrangements for a trip to India during the Christmas break. Charles talked to his family several times in the days before his scheduled departure. His mother believed something was very wrong.
Hello, Charles. This is your mother. I was concerned.
Mother. Yes, it's me. No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
I told
I'm
him
sorry.
that I was disturbed, and I felt that I should come to Chicago. And he said no. He said, "You don't need to come to Chicago because I'm perfectly all right, and I will be leaving for India in 3 days." So he assured me that everything was all right, and with that assurance, I didn't go.
It was the last time Mrs. Southern spoke to her son. 2 weeks passed.
We, of course, wondered why we didn't hear from him, but he had traveled so much and so often to so many parts of the world, I wasn't overly concerned until he was overdue.
Charles's parents drove the 300 miles from Cincinnati. When they broke into their son's house, a nagging concern for his well-being turned to outright fear. Charles's passport showed no sign of entry stamps from India. If he had not flown overseas, then where was Charles during the previous 2 weeks? Stashed in a drawer was a vial containing a powerful medication similar to the lethal South American poison curare.
We don't know why my brother had this vial, which was later identified to be a ganglionic blocker, which is a medicine used in anesthesia which causes total muscle paralysis. It has to be injected too, not eaten.
Precisely arranged on a ceremonial stool from Africa were Charles's winter dress hat and his coat, neatly folded inside out. Only later would the family learn the tableau was a Nigerian tribal symbol of death. But who might have left this sinister display? And finally, there were 2 scribbled notes, barely legible, but appearing to constitute a last will and testament.
This is Charles' handwriting, but it doesn't make sense.
One said in part, "I came under a bad influence and I was trying to fight it myself." Terry Hoffman was mentioned twice and named executor.
There was just a lot of death and unhappiness around this woman, and Charles' disappearance simply fits into that pattern.
Is there a pattern? If so, it is marked by stunning coincidence. Over a 12-year period, 2 of Hoffman's 4 husbands, her only son, 6 followers, and 2 people related to or employed by a follower came to an unnatural end. Causes of death: 1 murder, 4 fatal accidents, and 6 suicides. In over half of these deaths, Terry Hoffman had been recently named heir or beneficiary, designated to receive well over $500,000 in cash, plus hundreds of thousands more in real estate, fine art, and jewelry. Should Charles Southern be added to the list, or can his long absence be otherwise explained? Perhaps another mental break and a descent into the silent world of Chicago's homeless. It is important to note that authorities have not directly linked Terry Hoffman to any of the deaths, and no charges have been filed. Our letters and calls to Hoffman inviting her to participate in this broadcast were not answered. As for Charles Southern, at the time he vanished, Hoffman assured his family that she had no idea what had happened to him. Next, if you're young, attractive, and female, look out for a man named Jonathan Kern. He may be out to steal more than your heart. In the high-octane world of Formula One auto racing, danger and destruction may lurk around any curve. Those who emerge triumphant can win fame, fortune, and the kind of adoration usually reserved for rock stars and royalty. Big-time racing has spawned its own special breed of criminal. Case in point, alleged conman Jonathan Kern. He has reportedly made a career of impersonating a noted Formula One racer named Jonathan Palmer. The real Jonathan Palmer was a medical doctor before he became a world champion driver. He is all too familiar with Jonathan Kern.
He is most at home wearing Versace clothes, eating caviar and smoked salmon, and driving Mercedes-Benz sports cars and being escorted by gorgeous women. And as he cannot do that through genuinely earned income, he resorts to fraud to achieve his desired lifestyle.
Beginning in 1989, Kern reportedly crisscrossed Europe, racking up bills for designer clothes, elegant restaurants, and 5-star hotels, all in the name of Jonathan Palmer, all unpaid. Police say that in 1994, Kern brought his masquerade to America. Elizabeth Jeschek met him at a hotel in Miami, Florida.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm sorry, I don't usually do this, but I couldn't help but notice that book you're reading. I read it myself some time ago. I loved it. I'm wondering how you like it. I'm Jonathan Palmer.
There's a race car driver by that name, Jonathan Palmer.
That's me.
Elizabeth, who happened to know about car racing, had some initial doubts.
Wasn't your hair a little blonder?
It was blonder, yes, you're right.
And I asked a few more questions, and I said, well, what did you do before you raced cars? And he said, I was a medical doctor. And I said, that's right. I knew some background. I said, who did you race for? And he told me Tyrrell, which I knew was a British team. And I thought, wow, it really is you.
Yeah. Proof.
Kern's passport was a clincher.
I started having some doubt as to whether he was Jonathan Palmer, but it seemed easier to believe he was Jonathan Palmer than someone impersonating Jonathan Palmer. That never entered my mind that someone would be doing that.
Elizabeth Jeschek wasn't the only one impressed by Jonathan Kern. A car dealer provided Kern with a $78,000 Jaguar free of charge.
They dropped the keys at the desk and they said, this is for Mr. Palmer for his use while he's in America, and please make sure that he gets it. And we always believed him, and that just made us more convinced that everything was okay.
Oh, you're too sweet.
For Elizabeth Jeschek, Jonathan Kern was almost too good to be true.
Don't toy with me, Jonathan. If it's a fling that you're looking for, you're going to have to look somewhere else.
Elizabeth, I'll put my hand on my heart and promise that if this is what we really want, nothing will keep us apart.
Do it.
I couldn't understand intellectually why he was interested in me. I've been to a lot of the Formula One races, and I know a lot of them have beautiful girlfriends and wives, and they're wealthy, and I'm just a nobody. And I said to him, why are you interested in me? And he told me he just wanted a steady relationship. He didn't want the jet-set life. And he convinced me over the next few days that I was what he was looking for.
Sto bene. Sto in albergo bellissimo.
With Jonathan Kern, Elizabeth saw close up the busy life of an international star.
Sì.
Or so it seemed.
Rimango una settimana. Ho pensato a visitare la Connecticut, se me permette.
You want anything else for dinner?
No, thank you, I'm fine.
Indeed, everyone at the hotel, from bellhops to the manager, had been totally snowed by Kern's performance.
He just wove a web of intrigue around us and managed to stay, have a very nice holiday at the hotel for 5 days and run up a huge bill in the restaurant and, you know, have bottles of champagne delivered to his room. And we always believed him, despite the fact that he was already having a little bit of a problem with my front desk about how he was going to pay his bill.
Jonathan, excuse me.
David, how are you this evening?
I'm fine. We have some business to attend to at the front desk.
It's all been arranged in my office in Italy.
Well, I know, but we still haven't received an imprint.
I will call them tonight, immediately.
Well, if you would just take a moment, it won't take long at all.
I'm in a bit of a rush right now. I will call the office. I will have them ring you in the AM.
1 week later, Kern left the hotel without paying a dime on his $3,000 bill. Eventually, Elizabeth invited Kern to stay at her home in Connecticut. She still believed he was Jonathan Palmer, still believed he had put his career on hold to spend time with her.
Come on inside.
But Kern's thoughts had apparently turned to money, Elizabeth's money.
Thanks.
Elizabeth says that Kern convinced her to accept a personal check. It was drawn on an Italian bank for 11 million lira, nearly $8,000.
At the time, I was nervous about it, and the first question out of my family and friends when I told them was, did you give him any money? And I said, first I lied, and I just said, oh, no, no. And then once the check cleared, I said, see, it was fine. Yes, I did give him some money, but now the check is cleared, and I have the money back.
I've got a meeting tonight.
Jonathan's stay with Elizabeth was punctuated by frequent business trips to Manhattan. As usual, he went in style, now on a $125,000 Mercedes, lent to him by a local dealer. He also carried Elizabeth's ATM card, just in case of an emergency. Sure enough, Jonathan had an emergency.
Hi, it's Jonathan.
Hi, what's wrong?
You're not going to believe this. My wallet was stolen.
So what are you going to do now?
I don't know.
Once again, Elizabeth put her own money at Kern's disposal.
You still have my ATM card, don't you?
Yes, that was in my suitcase.
Well, why don't you just use that until you get home?
Wonderful, that's a great idea.
Elizabeth never dreamed Jonathan would use a card like a spigot to drain her account of cash.
I love you, bye.
I didn't really check up on him. I could have gone through his things, but I didn't. I just continued to try and believe in him.
However, by the time Jonathan returned from Manhattan, Elizabeth had had a complete change of heart.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Beth, you have to have patience.
I have been patient. It's not working.
Beth.
You can stay here for a week if you want to, but I don't want to do this anymore.
Look, you'll have your money on Monday.
It is not the money. It's us.
Jonathan Kern cleared out the next day.
Is this stuff on your
Elizabeth began calling numbers from her phone bill, matching them with names Jonathan had mentioned.
Do you know Jonathan Palmer?
Invariably, the answers came back the same.
You don't. I mean, didn't he call you? I mean, I have your phone number right here.
And that's when I knew this hadn't been Jonathan Palmer that was staying with me.
Call me when you get in. I'll drive.
How I realized some of the numbers that I called were other women. He'd been romancing other women while he was in Manhattan. I had been taken. He hadn't been in love with me. He was just using me. I just felt awful.
There was one final insult. Nearly a year after Elizabeth's bank cleared the check from Jonathan Kern, the bank learned the check was in fact not good. They debited Elizabeth's account. Police say that Kern swindled total some $15,000. Elizabeth Jess's check was forced into bankruptcy. Jonathan Philip Kern has been charged with forgery, felony criminal impersonation, and larceny. Kern is 42 years old, 5'10", 180 pounds. Though he is British, he is not Jonathan Palmer.
I think the most important thing is to be very, very suspicious if anybody comes to you wanting something and saying that they are Jonathan Palmer, the Formula One driver. This, me, is Jonathan Palmer. Jonathan Kern does not look like me, and I will have no problem if I'm in the US in being asked all sorts of probing questions to make sure that anyone can be sure that it is me who is going to a hotel or shop or whatever.
When we return, the murder of a young couple spawns two conflicting theories, but only one known suspect. But first, an accused killer spent 18 months on the run until one of our viewers spotted him. January 11th, 1995, Pasco County, Florida. It was a brazen and stunning escape. In police lingo, an accused killer was in the wind. Albert Leon Fletcher was a career criminal who had been awaiting trial on charges of murder, armed robbery, and aggravated assault and battery. All of the charges stem from his activities during a single 24-hour period. On April 2nd, 1993, Fletcher and his cousin Douglas Porter embarked on a wild rampage that ended in a brutal murder.
Give me your money! Come on, give me the wallet! Give me your wallet!
The victim was 32-year-old Nelson Medina. He left behind a wife and two young children. A few hours later, police arrested Albert Fletcher and Douglas Porter. Porter was convicted in the case and sentenced to life in prison. But Fletcher escaped before he could be brought to trial and remained at large for 18 months. But on the night of our broadcast, he was finally flushed from hiding. Here's Keely Shea Smith with the details.
Bob, it was a viewer in Delaware who pinpointed the whereabouts of Albert Leon Fletcher. She recognized Fletcher as one of her neighbors and immediately contacted the police.
On April the 29th, I received a telephone call from the authorities in Delaware advising me that they had a confidential informant and they knew the whereabouts of Albert Leon Fletcher. At that time, I sent a bulletin to Delaware, and this was around 3 o'clock that afternoon, and about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, they had him apprehended.
Authorities arrested Fletcher without incident at the Holly Hill Estates in Smyrna, Delaware. He had been living there since his escape using the alias Kevin Woodside. Apparently, Fletcher himself had grown tired of life on the run.
I know when Albert was talking to me, he was glad it was all over with. He wanted to come back to Pasco County and to Polk County and face the charges.
I really missed you.
I missed you too.
So how about next spring break we go away together, just you and I?
Okay.
It was a savage double murder, as mystifying as it was ruthless. Grant Hendrickson and Michelle Cartagena, two straight-laced Dean's List students from Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, killed in a fearsome barrage of semi-automatic rifle fire. No one knew why.
I'm starving.
I am too. What do you feel like eating?
They had been sweethearts for about 8 months when they went out for dinner and a movie on January 2nd, 1995. It was the beginning of a new year, full of promise.
Grant was the nicest guy, and he treated Michelle just like gold and would do anything for her. Michelle was very serious about Grant, and she cared for him a lot. I believe that he had and would have liked to have married her.
As Michelle and Grant drove to the movie theater, they were seen by a railroad foreman named John Ambrose. Michelle's white Honda Accord was in the right lane, and Ambrose was next to her, when a blue Honda CRX suddenly swerved in front of them.
Blue Honda came up to my left at a high rate of speed and immediately cut back in front of me and cut into the right-hand lane in front of the white Honda and then started slowing excessively. As I passed it, the driver looked at me like, you know, like, what's up? And it was a light-skinned black male, and it appeared he had a white male or female in the car with brown hair.
The blue CRX continued to slow, forcing Michelle to drop back. When Ambrose exited the interstate, he lost sight of both cars. Despite what happened on the highway, Grant and Michelle did get to the movies. Afterwards, they drove to a popular scenic overlook at nearby Lake Juliet. In an extraordinary coincidence, John Ambrose again found himself witnessing the prelude to murder. Now with a co-worker, Ambrose happened to be driving near the lake when he spotted both the white Accord and the blue CRX.
That's odd. Looks like the car I saw earlier.
The blue Honda was sitting there beside the road with its parking lights on. And it dawned on me at that time that that was the same car that I'd seen on the interstate, because it's just such an outstanding looking car.
Just down the road, Ambrose saw Michelle's car. It was heading in the direction of the parking area at Lake Juliet.
I thought it was strange that I saw these two vehicles at two different times within a 3 to 4 hour span that same particular night.
2 other eyewitnesses, teenagers parked at the lake, were able to pick up the account where Ambrose left off. They told police that the blue CRX drove into the park around 12:30 a.m.
What was that? Turn the music down. Listen. There. What was that? That can't be gunshots. Somebody's got to be playing around.
Moments later, the CRX raced out.
Let's go check it out.
The next morning, investigators faced the carnage. More than a dozen bullet holes perforated the car. Michelle and Grant had been killed instantly by multiple rounds of semi-automatic rifle fire. Grant was also shot twice in the chest and once in the head with a handgun. Michelle's body had been pulled from the car and dragged nearly 25 feet. Her clothing had been left in disarray.
It was a very horrendous type crime, something that I've never seen before in my tenure of law enforcement.
Everything pointed to the blue CRX. Then yet another witness came forward and spun the investigation in a totally new direction towards 2 young men in a white pickup truck. The night of the murders, Stephen Boyd was in the theater parking lot just after Grant and Michelle left the movies.
Hey, man, let's get out of the car, huh? Come on, let's
Calm down.
I'm perfectly calm.
Listen,
What are you doing with this guy, huh?
Get back in the car. You're being a jerk.
I'm being a jerk?
Yes.
How am I being a jerk here?
Some of his cussing words were sort of sluttered, and that made me feel like he had been drinking a lot.
You've been drinking, haven't you?
I've had a few, so?
Please just leave us alone, okay?
I am sick of this.
Stop it! Get the car, Michelle.
He was trying to make the other guy get out of the car. Because to me, it felt like that used to, it felt like someone that she used to go with or something,
Hey, come on, man.
His friend came and told him, said, let's go. It's not worth it. That's when I had noticed that this guy had a knife, a gun on the side, because it just glittered. It caught my eye.
Stephen, I'm going to show you 12 photographs.
Stephen Boyd's information seemed solid, credible. Police ran a photo lineup, hoping for more. They got it.
That's him right there.
The person that Stephen Boyd had picked out of the photo lineup was a fellow college student, was a friend of Michelle's, had a crush on Michelle at one time.
He is a very soft-spoken person, but when you introduce alcohol into a scenario and he's been drinking, then he has a very violent temper, and I've seen him do some very violent things when he's been drunk.
Well, he denied that he was in the parking lot when he was confronted with this information. He denied being anywhere in the area. The alibi that he had provided us, to this day, we're still unable to eliminate him. He is still suspicious.
Why don't you just leave us alone, okay?
Now everything pointed to the young man in the parking lot. But then there was a blue CRX, clearly implicated in the killings. Something was missing.
Connecting the blue Honda CRX and the individuals at the parking lot, we have not been able to do that yet. That is one thing that we're hopes to, when we do find this Honda CRX, to see if there is a connection.
When we return, the remarkable story of what may be one of the longest ocean voyages on record, 20 years, 25,000 miles. Most unsolved mysteries are fashioned by human hands. But as you're about to see, the most capable mistress of mystery may be Mother Nature. July 16th, 1978, the Finger Lakes of upstate New York. 9-year-old Kevin Reeder and his mother Merle whiled away a lazy summer afternoon with a little homespun whimsy.
When you find this bottle...
I know. Please drop me a line.
Perfect. Please drop me a line. I sent this out from Elm Beach, Ovid.
They signed the note with Kevin's name and address, then tucked it inside an old green glass bottle.
Okay. All right, you go ahead. Give it a good throw. Go ahead. Good arm.
Mom? How far do you think it could go?
I don't know.
We thought somebody around Aurora might find it, or it would go to the south end of the lake to Ithaca, where there's college kids, and they might be interested and see where it went and write to Kevin and give him a new pen pal.
After we tossed the bottle into the lake, it was probably it was part of a daily thought process, waiting for the mail, checking the mail, the anticipation, until it progressively faded away until you forgot entirely about it.
Kevin grew up and moved away, first to Florida, then to Texas. Like a bottle in a lake, he drifted a bit, trying to find his place in the world. Kevin had no idea he had launched the bottle on its own journey, a journey that would one day amaze everyone. In 1996, after 18 years, Kevin returned to his hometown. A letter postmarked San Diego, California was waiting for him. It had arrived only days before. Inside, Kevin found the last thing he ever expected, the message he had put in the bottle almost 2 decades earlier. It was accompanied by a note from 2 strangers.
When I called my mother, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "You're never going to believe this." It says, "Hello, Kevin. I found your message in a bottle, like that song, at the beach in San Diego, California. I thought it would be funny to write back. Pretty cool." It was signed by Rosa and Bruce, and it has a P.S. Where the heck is Ovid? But there's no return address or phone number.
18 years and more than 3,000 miles. The concept of how long and far the bottle had traveled was mind-boggling. Kevin's mother pictured it as a delightful adventure.
Bobbing along on a beach here and in a gully there, and somebody picked it up and just threw it back in again. Here I go again. Maybe a little bit of, heard some Japanese along the way, or spotted a Hawaiian girl sitting on the beach. But it had to bog down in different places with floods and things, reappeared, and just keep on moving until somebody finally decided to pick up some trash on the beach and found it.
The idea of a little bottle that could, floating its way around the world, is very appealing. But take away that romantic image, and we are left with an astonishing conundrum. How could an ordinary glass bottle transport itself across an entire continent, from an inland lake in upstate New York to the shores of the Pacific Ocean?
That is really amazing. I think it's a bit unlikely because of all the difficulties to get there. But that is truly amazing, but not impossible.
Go ahead.
Not impossible, the dreamer's motto. Dr. Richardson is one of the world's top experts on global water currents. Here's how Richardson says the most well-traveled bottle in history might have maneuvered through the waterways of the world. First, the bottle would have floated out of the lake through the Erie Canal, into the St. Lawrence Seaway, then out into the Atlantic Ocean near Nova Scotia.
Well, that's the hardest part because it's so easy for a bottle to go ashore and be found by someone. Once it gets into the Atlantic, it's easy for a bottle to stay adrift for many years.
From Nova Scotia, Dr. Richardson speculates the bottle might have floated south down the eastern seaboard, then veered east toward Europe. It cruised the west coast of Africa until a current swung it west to South America. Once it managed to cross the northward moving currents at the equator, the bottle would proceed back toward Africa, past the Cape of Good Hope, and into the Indian Ocean. It would then move east until it reached the South Pacific. After the bottle managed to again float across the equator, it must have drifted north past the Philippine Islands and Japan. After that, the bottle would have to travel east again, heading down the west coast of North America until it reached its final destination, San Diego, California.
I'm a bit skeptical. I think it went to California in someone's pocket or someone's suitcase. So I don't think it actually drifted there because of I think if you threw 1 million bottles in Lake Cayuga, you wouldn't have one reach the Atlantic. So that's sort of my conclusion. It's very difficult to get out through the canals and rivers without going aground or being found by someone.
Wind up and give it a throw.
To Kevin, the details of the bottle's journey don't really matter. Whether it went by land or sea or even air. What counts is that once upon a time he sent out a message, and at long last he has received an answer.
It gave me a sense of closure when I got back home and to find this note, to tap back into my childhood and to kind of parallel it with my life, the bottle's journey with my life's journey, and just kind of a reaffirmation that, hey, maybe you do belong right here, and this is just a little backup, a little support for you.
Bruce and Rosa did not give their last names or a return address, but Kevin's mother feels sure she knows at least a little bit about them.
They had to have some kind of a sense of humor to bother to pick it up and open it, read it, and then, you know, send our note back, say, where the heck is Ovid?
I like to picture it as a couple strolling the beach and just coming upon it and taking the time and energy to allow somebody to revisit their childhood like they've allowed me to do, and also just to thank them for it.
Admittedly, the incredible journey of Kevin's message in a bottle is one of our smaller mysteries, but it is also one of our most charming. We're hoping Bruce and Rosa will contact us here at Unsolved Mysteries to fill us in on the final chapter of Kevin Reeder's magical bottle. On our next Unsolved Mysteries, Bobby Fuller was on his way to rock and roll stardom. Then he turned up dead in the front seat of his car doused with gasoline. In Florida, 2 primitive fertility statues cause an uproar, but one woman after another, becomes pregnant with just a simple touch. Join me next time for more Unsolved Mysteries.